sending the data it has collected. It is capturing images of major global cities, including the distinctive rectangular shape of Busan Port, and transmitting them.
지금 우측 상단이 실제로 지금 위성이 지나가고 있는 궤도상에서의 위치를 표현을 한 것입니다. 그래서 저 위성이 지금은 이제 북극을 지나고 있는 것을 보실 수가 있고요. 보내는 명령은 저희가 사진을 어느 지역을 언제 찍을지에 대한 명령도 보낼 수가 있고요. 특별히 이제 받아보고 싶은 위성의 상태 정보가 있다면 그 정보를 이제 요청을 해서 받아볼 수도 있습니다.
This company not only manufactures small satellites, but also offers the world's first total satellite service, covering everything from design and manufacturing to launching and operating the satellites. By combining imagery with big data and artificial intelligence, they have developed technology to analyze wildfire areas and even track changes in population density in refugee regions.
글로벌 시장에서 경쟁력이 있으려면 일단은 위성을 통해서 로 데이터를 저희가 취득을 할 수가 있어야 되고요. 그리고 그거를 다시 최종 사용자에 활용될 수 있게끔 가공하는 것부터 시작을 해서 거기서 이제 딥러닝이나 AI 기술을 가지고 분석하는 것까지 서비스를 할 수 있어야 전체적인 과정상에서의 어떤 비효율을 많이 최대한 줄이고 원가를 절감하면서 이제 가격 경쟁력하고 고객에 맞는 최적화된 서비스를 드릴 수 있을 것 같아서 저희는 그렇게 사업을 진행을 하고 있습니다.
The advantages of small satellites include low production costs and the ability for mass production. It only takes a day to produce them, and they can also be custom-made. At the request of the city of Busan, they developed a small satellite to monitor marine fine dust.
반도체에 집적하라던가 아니면 그 전장품들의 이제 고도화와 동시에 가격들이 저렴해지고 있습니다. 이제 그런 것들을 저희가 이제 초저형 위성에다가 적용을 함으로써 위성의 단가를 많이 낮출 수 있고 그렇기 때문에 아무래도 각 지자체들이 필요로 하는 그런 목적이 있다면은 이런 초소형 위성을 활용할 수 있는 시대가 왔다고 생각을 하고 있습니다.
In the next 5 years, they plan to operate 100 small satellites in a constellation to provide real-time Earth observation services.
지금 위성 지구 관측 시장이 점점 더 이제 시의성이 높은 그런 데이터들을 요구를 하시거든요. 위성이 중요한 게 위성의 개수가 많아져야 실시간에 가깝게 서비스를 할 수가 있거든요. 그렇게 하려면 기존의 어떤 큰 대형 위성 위주의 위성이 아닌 초소형 위성 위주가 이제 대량 생산에 최적화되어 있기 때문에 어떤 성능을 만족시키면서도 위성을 많이 만들 수 있어서 군집 단위의 위성 운영이 가능한 시스템이기 때문에 요새 각광을 많이 받고 있지 않나 이렇게 생각을 합니다.
SpaceX is developing Starlink, a global internet communication service. They've already launched thousands of small satellites into low Earth orbit. By 2030, they plan to launch 42,000 satellites in phases, building a dense global high-speed internet network. Most of the small satellites being launched are also operated as constellation satellites. The small satellite service market is rapidly growing to reach 11.4 trillion Korean won by 2027.
1000km 미만의 저궤도 영역은 지구를 관측하기가 굉장히 좋아요. 지구를. 잘 보이거든요. 그 성공한 그 5% 정도의 뉴 스타트업들은 아마 지구 저궤도 영역에 새로운 사업을 하는데 굉장히 많은 돈을 벌 수 있을 거라고 지금 예측을 하고 있어요. 개척 영역으로 다가서는 이런 그 저궤도 영역을 우리의 국익을 반영할 수 있는 능력을 우리가 확보하지 않으면 대한민국은 더 이상 발전하기가 어렵다라는 게 우리나라가 지금 우주 개발에 몰입하고자 하는 그런 궁극적 목표라고 보는 거죠.
In the new space era, more economical and efficient space development has become possible. The space industry is gradually expanding, and competition among advanced nations is intensifying. Having started late, Korea needs to secure competitiveness through public-private partnerships. With the new space era, Korea is launching its own version of NASA, the Korea Aerospace Agency. It will play a crucial role in establishing long-term aerospace policies, promoting international cooperation, and advancing the space industry.
우주항공청의 단순한 정부 조직의 신설이 아닌 대한민국의 미래를 열어가고자 하는 이번 정부의 담대한 도전이라고 생각합니다.
궁극적으로는 결국에는 우주 산업을 우리가 국가 주력 산업화로 하기 위해서는 결국에는 수출 산업으로 갈 수밖에 없습니다. 위성 영상을 해외로 판매도 하기도 하고 발사 시장 같은 경우도 적도 근처에 해외 발사장을 건설해서 뭔가 한다거나 그리고 AI를 이용한 뭐 위성 영상이나 이런 데이터들을 이제 가공을 해서 뭔가 새로운 부가가치를 만들어내는 일, 우주 산업에서의 밸류 체인에 진입을 하는 이런 전략들이 이제 필요할 겁니다.
적극적으로 해외 기관과 협력과 탐사를 협조를 하든지 아니면 국제 협력을 주도를 하든지 해서 외교적인 문제, 그다음에 뭐 산업적인 측면에서 바라보는 어떤 문제, 새로운 수요를 만들어줘야 된다는 얘기죠. 그런 수요가 없다 그러면 결국 우리나라에서 만든 발사체 위성 쓸 데가 없어서 도태될 가능성이 높으니까 우주항공청은 그런 일을 적극적으로 해줘야 된다.
Pioneers who made the dream of launching our own satellites on rockets we developed with our own hands a reality. No set paths or shortcuts were given. It was the outcome of overcoming countless failures and growing from each experience. The time of exploration is not over yet. It's time to aim higher, go farther, and venture deeper. Out there, the universe is calling us.
제주특별자치도가 6차 4.3 희생자 보상금 신청을 2025년 1월 2일부터 2026년 12월 31일까지 받습니다. 신청 대상은 본인 및 민법상 상속권자가 가능하며 제주도 내 읍면동 주민센터로 방문 접수 혹은 도청 4.3 지원과 보상팀으로 우편 접수하시면 됩니다. 또한 4.3위원회 심의 결정 이후 보상금 결정서를 통지받으신 분들은 청구 서류를 제출하시면 됩니다. 자세한 사항은 제주도청 064-710-8450으로 문의하시거나 4.3 종합정보시스템 홈페이지에서 확인하세요.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.
The main opposition Democratic Party this time pushes for the impeachment of acting President Han Duk-soo, citing the cabinet today refusing to review two special counsel bills against President Yoon and the First Lady, the deadline set by the opposition. This sparked criticism from the ruling party and the government. Senior diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. meet in Washington and agree to resume security engagements that have been put on hold amid the recent political chaos in Korea. With 2024 being a year of much uncertainty on the international front, we take a look at how North Korea's military involvement in Russia's war against Ukraine this year has complicated the already grim situation. It's December 24th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Earlier today, acting President Han Duk-soo refrained from reviewing the special counsel bills against the president and the First Lady. He urged for more dialogue between lawmakers across the aisle. Today was the deadline set by the opposition. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon leads our coverage.
Despite heavy pressure from the opposition parties, acting President and Prime Minister Han Duk-soo during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday chose not to review the special counsel bills for President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Gon-hee. Instead, he called for more conversation between the ruling and opposition parties.
To wisely take care of matters that have legal interpretations and cause political views to clash, such as the special counsel bills and appointment of constitutional court justices, the ruling and opposition parties must put their heads together above all else.
The two special counsel bills, one for Yoon's alleged insurrection and the other for the First Lady's alleged stock manipulation scheme, need to be reviewed and either be approved or vetoed by the cabinet by January 1st. However, the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea called for swift approval and threatened impeachment unless Han provides approval by the earliest possible cabinet meeting, while an impeachment would suspend him as well. Han called for politicians to find ways to work together, hinting that the current special probe bill may seem unconstitutional.
If efforts are not made to establish a legal framework that both the investigation and the defense agree is fair, there is a significant risk of even greater distrust and hatred to grow in South Korea.
Han has already vetoed a bill last week as an acting president, as he has previously pledged to show consistency in government. Therefore, vetoes for the bills wouldn't be a big surprise, especially considering the probe for the First Lady has been vetoed multiple times before by President Yoon. In the meantime, an official at the Prime Minister's office said, quote, "As a member of the government, I find the comments by the DP deeply regrettable. I hope they will give more careful consideration in the future." The official reiterated that the government will thoroughly review the bills in accordance with the Constitution and the law, prioritizing the future of the nation above all else, as it has been doing. In addition, the official said the world is watching, and the international community has supported the current constitutional process and the Prime Minister assuming the role of caretaker, and another shakeup could only harm the nation. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, citing the refusal, the opposition is pushing to introduce a motion to impeach the acting president, but not today as initially planned. A part of the conflict was sparked by efforts to fill vacancies at the Constitutional Court. Choi Min-jung reports.
The main opposition Democratic Party is pushing through with an impeachment motion for acting President Han Duk-soo. The decision was adopted by the DP unanimously on Tuesday, with intentions to be submitted the same day. However, the party announced it would submit and report the motion on Thursday instead and put it up for an assembly vote as early as Friday. The move comes in response to Han's refusal to promulgate investigations on President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Gon-hee. The DP has been arguing that a cabinet that crosses the people's will does not have a reason to continue. To pass the impeachment motion, the DP says only 151 yes votes are needed, or a simple majority of the 300 lawmakers. However, the acting chair and floor leader of the ruling People Power Party, Kwon Sung-dong, argues that as he is acting president, it would require at least 200, as was the case for the impeachment motion against President Yoon. Also on Tuesday, the National Assembly, led by the opposition, adopted confirmation hearing reports for 3 nominees to fill the seats at the Constitutional Court of Korea. The opposition has repeatedly urged acting President Han to promptly appoint 3 additional constitutional justices to fill the 9-member panel to make the final decision on President Yoon's impeachment. The committee members questioned candidate Cho Han-chang on Tuesday. However, the ruling party members refused to participate, arguing that acting President Han has no authority to make the appointments. The opposition lawmakers aim to get Cho, along with the 2 other nominees who were questioned on Monday, confirmed by the Assembly at a plenary session this Thursday. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol will not be responding to a summons by investigators for questioning on Christmas Day, as his legal representative repeats claims that priority should first be placed on the impeachment trial. Meantime, the court is moving ahead with proceedings as scheduled. Yoon has the latest.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's lawyer says that it seems unlikely Yoon will attend the questioning scheduled for Wednesday with the Special Investigative Team, which includes the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. On Tuesday, lawyer Seok Dong-yeon, who is involved in the selection of Yoon's legal team, which is yet to be fully formed, explained to reporters that the president believes certain conditions must be met first. He emphasized that the Constitutional Court's impeachment trial process should take priority, and once the president's position is clearly communicated to both the justices and the public, the matter will be viewed more objectively and seriously by the public. This comes after President Yoon's office has repeatedly refused to accept summons notifications for the investigation. On the same day, the Constitutional Court spokesperson responded to concerns raised by President Yoon's legal team about the bench's 3 vacant seats, particularly regarding whether a 6-member panel can effectively conduct the full impeachment trial. During a briefing, the spokesperson reaffirmed that the trial can proceed with 6 justices and that the court will move forward with the first preparatory hearing scheduled for Friday. With President Yoon refusing to accept trial documents, it's uncertain whether he will submit the required documents by the 7-day deadline starting on the 20th. Additionally, the court announced that its justices will hold a second round of meetings on Yoon's impeachment this Thursday, with further details to be disclosed later. Meanwhile, No Sang-won, a former Defense Intelligence Command chief, was transferred to the Supreme Prosecutor's office in Seoul on Tuesday morning as one of the key figures in the martial law investigation. This stems from the so-called hamburger meetings, covert gatherings at a fast food restaurant where martial law details were allegedly discussed. A notebook seized from No could serve as crucial evidence, reportedly outlining troop deployments and plans to provoke a North Korean attack near the northern limit line, intensifying suspicions of his involvement in leading martial law despite his civilian status. 이은희, Arirang News.
The ruling People Power Party on Tuesday named 5-term lawmaker Kwon Young-se to lead its Emergency Leadership Cmte. Kwon, a representative of Yongsan-gu District in central Seoul, accepted the chairman's post 8 days after the former leader Han Dong-hoon resigned over the party's internal conflict stemming from the impeachment of the president. Accepting the role, Kwon said that the ruling party needs harmony, stability, and reform at a time like this, when it needs to earn back people's trust. The party will officially appoint Kwon following a meeting of its National Committee on December 30th. In the U.S., a senior-level diplomatic meeting took place between Seoul and Washington. The allies have agreed to resume interactions earlier postponed by the political fallout from Korea's brief imposition of martial law on December 3rd. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae In-ji has more.
First Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-kyun met with his American counterpart Kurt Campbell as South Korea works to put relations with the United States back on track amid political turmoil following the brief imposition of martial law earlier this month. This is the first time that a high-level meeting has taken place between the two countries since President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law on December 3rd. Kim reassured the United States that governance under the acting president is operating stably in South Korea. and showed hopes on strengthening bilateral relations, as well as a trilateral partnership with Japan.
U.S.-Japan trilateral cooperation, building upon the achievements we have made so far, not only for the remainder of the Biden administration, but during the upcoming new U.S. administration.
Campbell, who said he wishes South Korea well in a challenging period, said they're seeking to underscore their strongest possible commitment.
Our expectation is that the critical mechanisms in the U.S.-RK relationship will remain in place, and we believe that a meeting schedule is important.
Following their meetings, Seoul's foreign ministry said on Tuesday that the two sides agreed to fully resume diplomatic and security events that have been put off and hold them at the earliest possible and mutually convenient time. Earlier this month, the two countries postponed a session of the Nuclear Consultative Group, which is their key nuclear deterrence body. But with only about a month left until U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office, concerns remain as to whether South Korea will be able to handle issues such as the cost sharing for American troops in South Korea. A senior South Korean official told reporters in Washington that the government will work on expanding communication with Trump's team before and after the inauguration. The official added that although nothing has been confirmed, if Trump's side wishes, they are willing to arrange a phone call or an in-person meeting with South Korea's acting president Han Duck-soo, adding that the Yoon administration has been communicating with the Trump team since before the U.S. presidential election. 배은지, Arirang News.
One of the most notable developments on the global stage this year has been the deepening military alliance between Russia and North Korea. As 2024 comes to a close, we take a look at how Pyongyang's unprecedented involvement in the Ukraine war, both through troop deployments and weapons supplies, has shifted the dynamics of the conflict. For more, we're joined by our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-se. Jong-se, how far has this development gone?
Jong-min, North Korea has gone from a peripheral player in the Ukraine war to a critical partner for Russia. Pyongyang has reportedly supplied millions of artillery shells, dozens of ballistic missiles, and advanced rocket launchers to sustain Moscow's war effort. Most notably, it has sent around 11,000 troops to Russia's Kursk region, marking an unprecedented scale of involvement. This partnership reflects North Korea's strategic goal to secure advanced military technology. According to Professor Im Chul of Gyeongnam University, Pyongyang is leveraging its contributions to gain sensitive technologies from Moscow. Here's what he told us.
At this moment, we have to think about all types of advanced technology could be provided to North Korea. I think North Korea already delivered wish list of advanced technology to Russia.
Professor Im explained that North Korea's contributions, such as ammunition and troops, are calculated to maximize returns from Moscow, with advanced technologies being a key objective. He suggested these technologies could span various fields without clear limits. In contrast, Professor Park Won-gon of Ewha Women's University suggested that Pyongyang is more likely receiving conventional resources and weapons, such as rather than sensitive technologies. Take a listen.
Russia has never shared such sensitive advanced technologies with its allies or friendly nations. It is more plausible that North Korea received conventional weapons, food, crude oil, or cash payment per deployed soldiers rather than advanced weaponry.
He also noted that the likelihood of such transfers would further decrease under a Trump administration, which would prioritize homeland defense and strongly oppose any move that enhances North Korea's military capabilities.
It's clear North Korea's role in the Ukraine war is raising broader concerns, but how much impact has this alliance actually had on the battlefield?
Well, the impact of this alliance actually reflects strategic necessities on both sides. Professor Im noted that Russia would be very satisfied with North Korea's contributions as they help fill critical gaps caused by prolonged fighting and Western sanctions. Meanwhile, Professor Park pointed out that this partnership also highlights Russia's weaknesses, particularly its reliance on North Korea to sustain the war.
These demonstrate that Russia lacks the capacity to sustain the Russian-Ukraine war independently and has resorted to enlisting North Korean support. It reflects a strategic necessity for Russia to continue its war effort.
Now, shifting to the domestic front, North Korea is preparing for its annual Workers' Party plenary meeting where Kim Jong-un is expected to focus on showcasing his regime's broader strategic achievements. However, it's unclear whether Pyongyang will address troop deployment at this high-profile event. Professor Im predicts that while Kim may reveal these developments eventually, the regime is carefully planning how to manage domestic reactions.
Sooner or later, Kim Jong-un will disclose, all kinds of facts, including casualties happened in Russia and Ukraine war. Kim Jong-un already made some arrangement to minimize its negative impact on their regime.
Jong-sil, what should we watch out for heading into 2025?
Well, a key question is how the incoming Trump government would react to North Korea's alignment with Russia and how they will approach the situation. Now, take a listen to what Professor Park has to say about President-elect Trump's potential strategy.
He already mentioned several times one of his top priority of his foreign policy agenda is to stop the Russian-Ukraine war. Even he said that within 24 hours. And it makes such a huge impact in various areas, especially for the dispatchment of the North Korean troops to that war. There is a possibility that Trump would have some kind of resume the communication channel with Kim Jong-un, and he probably demand or request to stop deployment.
At the same time, North Korea's deepening ties with Russia signal a strategic shift, positioning Pyongyang as a more active player in global geopolitics. How Pyongyang navigates this partnership in light of potential U.S. pressure under a Trump administration will be a key factor shaping its strategy in 2025.
All right, Jong-sil, thanks for your analysis. Consumer confidence here in the country has lost substantial ground amid the ongoing political turmoil. The index for December tumbled well below 100, indicating rampant pessimism about consumption prospects. Park Go-nu has the latest data.
Consumer sentiment in South Korea is worsening amid the ongoing political turmoil. On Tuesday, the Bank of Korea released its Composite Consumer Sentiment Index for December, which showed a drop of over 12 points on month to 88.4. That's the largest drop since the 2008 financial crisis. A CCSI below 100 indicates a pessimistic view of consumer sentiment compared to the average of the past 2 decades. And key components of the index, including the current economic assessment and economic outlook, saw their steepest declines in recent years. An official from the central bank attributed the downturn to factors, including the political crisis since the short-lived martial law order earlier this month, along with ongoing concerns of a slowdown in exports with the second Trump administration. The official added that any recovery in consumer sentiment will depend on how quickly the political uncertainty is tamed. One expert said more proactive governmental policies are needed in these difficult circumstances.
More effective policies are needed to stabilize prices, and ongoing efforts must be made to support small business owners so that they have the solid foundations to keep their businesses running smoothly.
The expert added the budget should be used more efficiently to avoid compromising fiscal soundness, while underscoring the need for deeper consideration when making policies. On Monday, during an economic ministerial meeting, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok pledged to prioritize restoring people's livelihoods by fully mobilizing government resources. He shared plans to vitalize the domestic economy through policies for each sector, including tourism and construction. Choi added he'll do his best to ease the burden on households by addressing essential living costs, including food and housing. Further details are set to be announced early next week. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea has officially become a super-aged society, meaning the population aged 65 or older accounts for at least 20% of the total population. Eyes are on what comes next. Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
The Ministry of the Interior and Safety said on Tuesday that South Korea has officially become a super-aged society with 20% of its population aged 65 and over. According to data from the ministry, as of Monday, the number of people in this age group is 10,244,550, accounting for 20% of the total registered population of 51,221,286. The United Nations classifies societies based on the percentage of the population aged 65 and over. It is considered an aging society if the percentage exceeds 7%, an aged society if it surpasses 14%, and a super-aged society if it exceeds 20%. The percentage of the registered population older than 65 gradually increased from 10.02% in 2008 to 11.01% in 2011, 12.03% in 2013, 13.02% in 2015, 14.02% in 2017, and 14.9% in 2019, before exceeding 20% yesterday. Eyes are on whether this new milestone will trigger a societal debate on the issue of whether to extend the legal retirement age in Korea, which is currently 60. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
With cold wave warnings and advisories still in place, some regions experienced a frigid morning today with temperatures of -10 degrees. It will continue to be colder than usual nationwide until tomorrow morning. From tomorrow afternoon, the temperatures will rise 1 to 3 degrees higher than today across the country. Even though the sky will stay cloudy, it will be difficult to expect a white Christmas like last year. However, light snow can be seen in the central and western parts of the country, along with Jeju Island between tomorrow night and dawn Thursday. On Christmas Day, Daejeon and Daegu will start off at -2 degrees, Gwangju -1 degree. Highs will move up to 7 in Daejeon and Daegu, Gwangju and Gyeongju 8 degrees. The morning temperature will plummet to -7 degrees in Seoul on Friday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Merry Christmas.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching and happy Christmas.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea? If you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지? 김치?
종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 걸어를 찾을 수도 있지. 제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기. 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Now, amid the ongoing war in Ukraine, North Korea's recent actions and its growing military ties with Russia have sparked international concern. South Korea's intelligence agency says North Korean troops have now been fully deployed to the front lines in Ukraine, adding that at least 100 of them have been killed and 1,000 injured during a combat. Despite the casualties, North Korea has remained tight-lipped about the situation, raising questions about how much its citizens are aware of the developments. Meanwhile, the regime is seen to have expanded satellite capabilities as recent advancements have been detected at this Seohae satellite launch facility. Amid these shifts, the North's sharp criticism of the trilateral alliance of the U.S., Japan, and South Korea suggests a deeper strategy at play. For a deeper analysis on this, we invite our go-to North Korean expert, Dr. Kwon Young-se, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of National Security Strategy. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us from the U.S. is Frank Januzzi, President and CEO of the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Great to have you.
Good evening.
So let's start right away with our discussion. According to the National Intelligence Service of Korea, North Korean troops have started being fully deployed to the front lines from this month. Well, it's almost 2 months since they were first deployed. How much of a help do you think the troops are for Russia?
Well, thank you for the question. And although the North Koreans have clearly made a significant commitment to Russia in the Ukraine war, providing millions of rounds of ammunition, as well as now 11,000 combat troops, so far the impact on the battlefield has been marginal. Remember, these are essentially light infantry troops. They are skilled in reconnaissance, sniper activities, gathering intelligence, but they are not designed to be main force combat units. And so they are filling a critical gap in terms of total manpower in the Russian army. This has become a war of attrition, but their impact on the battlefield, they are unfamiliar with the terrain of Ukraine. They are unfamiliar with the languages being spoken, Russian and Ukrainian. And so I think that so far, the impact in terms of Russia's military performance has been marginal. But there's a larger strategic dimension to this, which I'm sure we will also get into tonight.
All right, we will look forward to that. So as of now, we are aware that there's at least 100 deaths from North Korean soldiers. As far as I know, these developments have not been reported through North Korea state media, but the North did actually report on the alliance, military alliance with Russia. Dr. Go, do you think the North Korean citizens are unaware of the whole situation?
I think they should be aware of this by now. I mean, despite the fact that there's been an absence of reporting through the official North Korean media. And the reason is because the North Koreans do have access to external information that might not be immediate or right away, like elsewhere in the world. Nonetheless, the information from the outside seeps into North Korea through the reception through Chinese phone network near the border area. They are limited, but then there's a constant exchange, people-to-people exchange between North Korea and China, as well as North Korea and Russia. So the information does get in. And so in that sense, I think North Koreans know that their soldiers have maintained presence in Ukraine. They are probably serving the front lines on behalf of the Russians. So I think that's one of the reasons why the North Korean state is refusing to acknowledge this officially, because even though from the North Korean's perspective, North Korean intervention in the Ukraine war it's not justifiable. Essentially, the North Korean soldiers are fighting somebody else's war far away from the region, let alone defend the country or against the traditional enemy of North Korea, such as United United States, South Korea, or even Japan. So I think North Korean regime understands it's going to be politically difficult to defend this decision. I think that's the reason why the North Korean presence in Ukraine is not being acknowledged officially for now.
Right, so they have an idea,
a
vague idea.
Yeah.
Well, the National Intelligence Service also is monitoring the possibility that Kim Jong-un may send additional troops from the storm course. How do you view this, and do you think there's any room for internal opposition within North Korea?
Well, I think so far the estimate of the North Korean soldiers sent to Russia has been around 11,000. So, but then we have to take into consideration that even the 11,000 soldiers seem pretty big. We have to take into consideration the casualty rate of the soldiers, both in the Ukrainian and Russian side in this war. It's extremely high. So recently there have been think tanks and experts who estimated the casualty ratio for the Russian military in the Ukraine war, and that was extremely high. It was like 1,200 soldiers per day. So these are casualties, including killed and wounded. So if you apply the same rate to the North Korean troop size in Ukraine right now, Russia, sorry, it's around 11,000. So you divide that by 12. So we're talking about 9 days worth of soldiers, manpower right now in Russia. So if North Korea wants to maintain its presence, it wants to maintain combat effectiveness, then it means that North Korea should send more soldiers. So I think this is the reason why there are reports coming out that North Korea is preparing to send even more soldiers to Russia. So Ukrainian sources have speculated that the level of North Korean military present in the Ukraine war could reach as many as 100,000 in the future. And that sounded implausible when the first report of such numbers came out earlier. But at this rate, it could be possible. So it demonstrates how nasty and severe the combat is right now in Ukraine war.
Right. So with this concerns that more people are going, then do you think there's going to be internal opposition within the North Korean public? So,
we're talking about North Korea, not any other country. So internal dissent is never explicit in a regime like North Korea. But there could be discontent, or for example, people feeling that maybe even North Korean public might think that increased augmented presence of North Korean soldiers on behalf of Russia could even lead to deterioration of the defense posture at home here in North Korea. So I think that could raise the fear that the United States or even South Korea could mount military actions against the country. So in fact, I think one of the reasons why the North Korean military or North Korean regime has been quite inactive in the last couple of months, despite the fact that the last month was the elections in the United States, and traditionally that was a time for the North Korea to launch major provocations, but they haven't done so this time. So perhaps the lack of action on the part of North Korea probably is due to the fact that they've maintained sizable military presence in Russia right now, and then the North Koreans probably fear that's undermined their defensive posture. So I think they want to maintain the situation as much stable as possible.
All right. Now, what about Mr. Januzzi? How do you interpret North Korea's growing military cooperation with Russia, including the possible supply of missiles and artillery? What's the strategic significance of this alliance for North Korea?
Well, what you see from Pyongyang is a desperate effort to essentially realign their channels of dependency. In the past, North Korea has been heavily dependent upon China for resources, for energy, for financial investment, for technology. And what you see now is North Korea building an alliance with Russia to supply all of those things, money, oil, technology, as well as potentially some investment. And this represents for North Korea an effort essentially to build greater balance. So they are not overly dependent upon China. And so they also then have more strategic maneuverability as they chart their path on the international stage. I would caution about the casualty figures that we're hearing. I don't think there's anywhere close to 1,000 casualties per day being suffered by Russian forces in Ukraine. And traditionally in warfare, the early casualty figures tend to be rather distorted. And although we are 2 years into this conflict, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the actual casualty figures on both sides. But for certain, North Korea will suffer casualties as they are involved in this war. And I strongly agree with Professor Go when he speaks about the possibility of more North Korean forces traveling to Russia and Ukraine. I think it's highly likely that North Korea will rotate special forces into the conflict. And while at any given moment, there may only be 10 or 15,000 North Korean troops on the ground, over the coming months and indeed years, it is likely that more than 100,000 North Korean troops will serve in this war, and that many of them will come back injured, and others will perish in the conflict. And I think eventually this kind of a drain on North Korea will perhaps spark some internal reflection about the wisdom of their engagement. But for now, I also agree with Professor Go. I don't see any signs of discontent. This realignment, however, is significant. And Pyongyang expects to get high technology out of Russia to advance their missile programs, as well as know-how to proceed on scientific fronts across the board.
Right. Now, as Mr. Januzzi has mentioned about the uncertainty of casualties, but there's Ukrainian special forces released a video on the attack on over 100 of North Korean soldiers using drones. I mean, not using drones, but engaged in the drone attacks. Now, despite this, there are concerns that North Korea might gain experience with these drone attacks, and then they could use this against future South Korea, inter-Korean relations. Are you concerned about this?
Well, I think clearly there's a concern that North Koreans are being exposed to modern warfare for the first time in 70 years. We know that North Koreans troops haven't engaged in division-level combat since the end of the Korean War. They didn't send a sizable number of troops to abroad anytime, as far as we know, in any conflict around the world. They've been assisting their partners around the world with advisors and perhaps special forces, and mostly with the military advisors. So this is the very first time that North Koreans are maintaining a sizable troop presence, combat troop presence elsewhere in the world. And so I think there's a lot of catching up to do for the North Korean military. I'm sure they are just recording all their experiences, and eventually they want to translate that to their own tactics and strategies in this part of the world. But on the other hand, though, we have to understand that the nature of the combat that's taking place right now between Russia and Ukraine is not really a cutting-edge warfare. So even though we see a massive use of drones, that's clearly a very distinguishing characteristic of this war. But then the technology involved with this, there's also a very primitive side to this. What I mean by this is that even though there's a massive use of drones, there's electronic warfare, there's cyber attacks and all that. On the other hand, the actual battle lines is reminiscent of none of the Gulf War in the 1990s or even 2000s, or the Second World War. It actually reminds experts of the First World War, of trench warfare. There's a massive use of artillery. There's trench warfare. So thousands of soldiers are dying on each side to gain not even kilometers of terrain. We're talking about thousands of meters. So essentially, this is a very old-fashioned warfare with drones, though. So I think if North Koreans could acquire more advanced knowledge, for example, very division-level combined forces maneuvering that combines air power and long-range strike capabilities, then that'll be a source of concern for South Korea and its allies. But right now, what the North Koreans are engaged in, essentially they are being seconded to the Russian military, which is engaged in trench warfare. So if they come back with that knowledge to Korea, they'll find out that the South Korea and United States, obviously, they are much more technologically advanced and that they are much more capable of more dynamic warfare that the North Koreans have ever seen in the current cycle of war in Ukraine. So I think there are clearly sources for concern for North Koreans gaining combat experience, but on the other hand, at the strategic and tactical level, I think that concern is exaggerated.
Okay. Now, meanwhile, the Voice of America has reported that North Korea's Seoul satellite launch facility, located in Dongcheongni, has recently had the roof installed on its key horizontal assembly building. Mr. Januzzi, how significant is the regime's recent development at the Seoul facility, and how might this affect the region's security dynamics?
Well, thank you for the question. You know, Kim Jong-un in his party plenum last year promised 3 satellite launches at Sohae this year, and they were unable to accomplish one successful launch. So I think this represents a commitment by Kim Jong-un to continue to modernize his satellite launch capacity to eventually develop some more robust surveillance satellite capabilities to enhance North Korea's strategic independence and ability to survey the situation on the Korean Peninsula, for its own, rather than having to rely upon information that might have been provided by China or Russia. So this definitely represents Kim Jong-un's scientific side, his desire to move the country forward technologically into a more modern era. But in terms of its significance, again, on the peninsula, in terms of the overall security dynamic, the balance of power between North Korea and South Korea and its allies, the United States, I feel that this is not going to prove to be any sort of a groundbreaking accomplishment. But I think politically it's significant for Kim Jong-un, who has promised to push forward in this area. And it's also significant in that it represents North Korea's growing independence strategically on the global stage. At the Mansfield Foundation, we've conducted a study of the major power interests on the Korean Peninsula. And I think it's important for your viewers to appreciate that each country is pursuing its own agenda, and these agendas intersect. And in the case of Russia, there's a desire to get to extract from North Korea manpower and ammunition, as well as maybe sort of some assistance to help them in Ukraine. But on the part of North Korea, the relationship with Russia and the investment in Sohae and technology represents their drive for a higher degree of global autonomy and independence. If you will, a fulfillment more of the Juche philosophy in terms of being more their own master and more self-reliant on the global stage.
Well, thank you for sharing your analysis from your foundation. Now, Mr. Januzzi, it's also noteworthy that North Korean acts of provocations have somewhat stopped as we enter the impeachment crisis of President Yoon Suk-yeol here in South Korea. How could we interpret the halt?
I think it is instructive to look at North Korea's history in advance of major political events, both in South Korea and in the United States. And here, of course, you have both. You have the impeachment of President Yoon, and you also have the election of Donald Trump. In times of political realignment, North Korea traditionally scales back actions which would commit it to a particular course of action in order to maintain maximum flexibility. So in this case, the quiet to the north of Seoul, to me, I believe, represents uncertainty on the part of North Korea about exactly what will unfold with President Yoon's impeachment. Will he be replaced? Will his government ultimately be replaced by a progressive government in Seoul? As well as uncertainty on the global stage. President Trump has made no secret of his ambition to resume diplomacy with North Korea. And while North Korea so far has offered no particular interest in that diplomacy, I think North Korea wants to maintain a maximum flexibility. And so provocations would be very unwise, as it would tend to sour the pot in advance of a potential opening with Washington.
Right, so they're keeping silent to make use of their future strategies, make it more flexible. So the regime has sharply criticized U.S., Japan, and South Korea for their Indo-Pacific dialogue lately. Dr. Go, what do you think is the North's motive of its criticism and its goal of hostile rhetoric around the trilateral alliance?
Well, by now, the North Korean criticism of the trilateral cooperation is routine or even familiar to us. And there are two major reasons for that. And one is strategic, the other one is more practical. So with the strategic dimension, North Korea clearly wants to create the perception that the United States, South Korea, and Japan are getting together, and then also for creating a bloc to counter another bloc. And in this case, the other bloc would be the bloc of the authoritarian regimes headed by China, Russia, and North Korea. And this is the basis for the so-called New Cold War that the North Koreans are claiming that is characterizing the current times. And this is a very convenient argument because North Korea, by characterizing the current international relations, international situation as one of a bloc confrontation, it naturally positions itself alongside with China and Russia, and it creates this perception that China and Russia have to help North Korea in North Korea's confrontation with the United States, South Korea, and Japan. And this is an argument that the Chinese are very much opposed to. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why the relationship between China and North Korea is not that great at the moment. Clearly, China is very critical of North Korea and trying to drive this argument and somehow taint China's other relationship with the United States and such countries like the United States and South Korea and Japan. China clearly craves stability at the moment, which North Korea doesn't care much about. So, and then so moments like this, when the three countries, United States and Korea and Japan, get together to engage in political discussions, this is a prime opportunity for North Korea to highlight this fact over and over. So essentially, this is a part of their propaganda campaign. There's a more pragmatic dimension to this, is that the North Koreans are very much concerned about the increased deterrence effect of the enhanced equity cooperation between Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo. It completely undermines North Korea's investment in the enhanced nuclear and missile capabilities, because the three countries can, not just by sharing information, but also coordinating their actions, also mounting joint exercises, kind of a much more effective countermeasures against North Korean long-range missiles. And so in that sense, I think it really lays to waste North Korea's decades-long investment in missile and nuclear capabilities. And for that reason alone, North Koreans are not too happy about this.
Right, so because they took years to develop their capabilities. Right. Now, finally, regarding the upcoming North Korean plenary session, Mr. Januzzi, which is expected to be held next week, what kind of policies do you think North Korea will pursue next year, especially after, promoting the two-nation theory this year?
Well, thank you. And yes, for the last several years, Kim Jong-un has chose to forego the previous tradition of a New Year's address in favor of rolling out his policy positions in a party plenum. And I think this year you will see both some change as well as continuity. On the change side, I think you will see a stronger emphasis of North Korea on the global stage. If you will, it's his own counterpoint to President Yoon's global pivotal state theory. North Korea now, by joining the Ukraine conflict with Russia, is playing a larger role on a global stage on world events far away from the Korean Peninsula. And although I don't believe that Kim Jong-un will refer to casualties or even to a combat role of his forces in Ukraine, I think he will celebrate the Russia alliance, and he may make reference to North Korean forces being supportive of the Russian effort on the global stage. He will also double down, I believe, on his efforts for economic construction, but here his regime is facing significant headwinds. Economic performance in North Korea has not been strong. The people are not enjoying the level of prosperity that Kim Jong-un has promised for a decade of his governance. But he will nonetheless, I think, exhort his people to redouble their efforts to build a modern socialist state. And of course, he will emphasize still the nuclear arsenal and the expansion of it and the modernization of it. I agree with Professor Go that the U.S. ROK Japan alliance presents a strategic challenge to North Korea. But in the face of that challenge, I think that Kim Jong-un will most likely double down on his investment in nuclear weapons. He will also do so in part because even if he plans to have a diplomatic overture with President Trump, he would begin such an overture by strengthening his bargaining position to the maximum extent possible.
All right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave our discussion right here. Many thanks for your insights, Mr. Januzzi.
Thank you very much.
And of course, our Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 거절을 찾을 수도 있지. 제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기. 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 진짜 한국에선 어떻게